Welcome to MTB New Mexico. Some time ago, after riding with my friend, he shared something about his life that sparked a question in my mind. During a hard time in his life, he was in need of an escape, searching for ways to deal with pain, anxiety, and depression. My friend was becoming desperate. One day, one of his friends offered to loan him a bike and ride some local trails. He had never been mountain biking before, but he decided to try it anyway. After that day, he was hooked. He told me these words, the words that I've heard over and over. Mountain biking saved my life. I needed to find out more about this, so I contacted my friend Raquel, which is a specialist in this type of work. She was kind enough to share this information with all of us.
I'm Dr. Raquel Garzon, and I am a human performance expert. I have a company, I do have a training company, and I train corporate employees on stress and resilience, work-life integration, how to thrive in the face of change and demand, and things like that. And I also specialize in neuroscience, and I'm gonna talk about that a little bit here. I'm very grateful that Jose Solis has invited me, my friend Jose, to talk about this. I want to talk about the impact that mountain biking can have on our brains, and specifically on managing stress and becoming more resilient from a neuroscience perspective. So I'm going to talk about the brain and how it works, and there's three parts of the brain. There's the brain stem that I'm going to talk about. I'm going to talk about the emotional part of the brain, or the limbic system, and then I'm going to talk about the rational part of the brain, which is the prefrontal cortex, and how mountain biking actually impacts in a positive way each and every one of those parts of the brain. So when we look at the different parts of the brain, I'm going to start at the brain stem, which is where all of our signals come in. We're taking in signals from our environment and also from inside of ourselves to inform the brain as to what's going on. And this part's really important because the brain is trying to determine if we're safe, if there's something really compelling that we need to respond to. And in mountain biking, the great thing about it is that you're doing it in nature. And what you see, because that's one of our senses and that's coming into the brain, and what you hear is really, really important, and it influences how safe we feel and if our needs have been met. And we know from the science that when we see nature, so when we look at anything, whether it's trees or rocks or mountains or the sky, the sun, clouds, anything like that, it has a chemical effect in our brain, and the brain likes it. It feels safe, it feels comfortable. And so being out on the mountain bike just in nature already has a calming effect to our nervous system, to our sympathetic nervous system, which is the fight or flight. Even hearing nature sounds while you're out there can have an impact as well. So once we get past that brainstem and we've taken in those external and internal signals, we move to the emotional part of the brain. And the emotional part of the brain is still trying to assess safety, but it's also trying to assess this notion of belongingness, which is really important for human beings. It also has an excitability factor in terms of adventure and excitement versus fear and running away types of things. And so mountain biking is really great because it stimulates this concept of increasing sort of excitability and this notion of adventure, but doing it within a safe environment. If you increase excitability in an unsafe environment, it really translates to fear and anxiety and frustration and impatience and things along those lines. So stimulating excitement here has a completely different chemical effect. This is a chemical effect that you will get growth, you will get anti-inflammatory chemicals being released that then benefit our brain and our bodies. So that part is really great about it. It's this notion of adventure, a little bit of risk-taking without having to take risks to save your life. So it's like safe risk-taking from that perspective. The other aspect of it from a belonging perspective is that mountain biking really brings this kind of group sense to you. If you're mountain biking with a group, they're very kind and compassionate. They want to teach you things. They understand and remember how it was to be a beginner. There's a lot of encouragement and support, and you can do this, and let me show you how to do this. And it's really exactly, from a neuroscience perspective, the exact environment that you want to have to thrive, to grow, to feel okay, to make mistakes, because you're in an environment in which you're not going to be ridiculed, you're going to be encouraged and supported. And so I think that part is really important, because many of us don't get that at our workplaces. This is something I work on with workplaces, but it is hard to get that in a lot of workplaces. And this is a place in which you can really tap into that. Even if you bike alone, you pass people on the trails and they will ask you, are you okay? Do you need anything if you've stopped somewhere? So even as a solo rider, you still feel the group effect in the parking lot while you're on the trail and at other places. So from an emotional perspective, you can really create this kind of excitement in a very safe environment, which is very good from a personal growth perspective, growing your confidence, being able to practice self-compassion, compassion to others. And the great thing about mountain biking is it's a training field to begin to develop this, but then you take it right off the trail into your homes and into your workplaces, and you really become a better person because of it. So once we get past the brainstem and the emotional part of the brain, we move into the rational part of the brain, which is at the very front here, and that's the prefrontal cortex. And this is basically our rational thinking, decision-making, problem-solving, all of these sorts of things that are much more logical than the emotional side. And this is really, really important, because a lot of stress and resilience really ties into this part of the brain. If you're stressed, a lot of times it's because of your prefrontal cortex, your rational brain, and what you're telling yourself, the beliefs that you have about it. But it's also an opportunity to really create a lot of resilience. So I'm going to start with this concept of mindset. Mindset is what you believe about yourself, the world, others. It's your belief system. Here we also have attitudes, and then we have thoughts. And this mindset really determines how you view the world and how you respond to the world. What's great about mountain biking is you're putting yourself into some situations that maybe you don't normally get into. And so what it causes you to do is actually begin to question some of the components of your mindset. So maybe you believe, I'm not really good at these sorts of things, right? You might have beliefs about yourself, about what you're good at and what you're not good at. And mountain biking lends itself to begin to question those beliefs. And what you discover is that beliefs, although they feel very ingrained, you can challenge them, especially if they are not fitting with what you want to get out of life. So for me, I know that I questioned some of those things and began to believe new things that have really helped me. These attitudes around, that you have to be fit, or you have to weigh a certain amount or look a certain way to mountain bike. Those are attitudes. We would consider those attitudes because they have judgment to go with them. And what you will see if you mountain bike with a group is all of those judgments go out the window. You cannot tell by looking at someone or their bike how they're going to bike and how they're going to do. And so it also then causes you to question yourself around these sorts of things. So these attitudes, again, it just creates this platform for seeing the world differently and challenging some of these things. And then, of course, you have these random thoughts that come into your head. What am I doing here? Why did I agree to this? While you're mountain biking. And you catch yourself and then you say, well, that's not helping me. I need to encourage myself. You hear the things that people say to each other, and you begin to adopt this more positive way of talking to yourself, a more positive way of really thinking about what it is that you're doing. And what I have found is that it's such a positive environment that you can't help but let it become part of you, and it begins to become embedded in you. And this is really helpful because, once again, you take it off the trail into your real life. The other thing that I think I found compelling about mountain biking is the focus and attention that you have to have in order to do this. You are 100% focused on what you're doing. You're looking at what's coming up ahead. What line am I going to take? How am I going to shift my weight, my balance? Maybe how am I going to use my brakes? How am I going to come into a turn? You can't think about anything else. And the great thing about practicing focus and attention is that many of us lack those skills because we're constantly multitasking. So it helps you to develop skills that you can use in your everyday life, but it forces you to use mindfulness. And mindfulness is a technique that many think are about like meditating and closing your eyes and breathing. But mountain biking is mindfulness. And when you practice mindfulness, you actually make your brain stronger. It integrates the emotional and rational parts of your brain. It reduces anxiety, fear, rumination of thoughts. It increases the ability to respond to stress with more resilience. You see things in a more positive way. Mindfulness has so many different uses, and most people don't practice it. But mountain biking will force you to practice it without even realizing that you're doing it. So what's great about it is you come off the trail and you probably invested an entire hour in mindfulness at the same time that you did everything else for yourself. So it's really an integrated way to bring the brain together in a way that truly translates from a neuroscience perspective to reducing stress, everyday stress, and increasing your resilience. So I had always really wanted to start mountain biking, but I really didn't know where to go and how to get started. And I saw Jose post a video about mountain biking, and I was like, that is so cool. And he was like encouraging beginners to get started, and that he was a beginner and had started. And I happened to see Jose at Taekwondo. So his kid and my kids did Taekwondo together. I saw him and I was like, are you the guy that posted that mountain biking video? And he said yes. So I went out there. I was so nervous. I didn't even have the right bike. I didn't even know I didn't have the right bike. And Jose and several people that he was with that day, they were so encouraging, and I crashed on the first day. But even though like it was hard, I could sense like, wow, I know that there's something here for me. I want to keep doing this. And so I went back again with my not so great bike, and I just kept doing it. And then eventually, not too long into it, I was like, okay, I need a serious bike for this. So I got a bike and just kept going. And every time I went, I felt like, okay, there was at least one thing I did better, right? So maybe like not everything, but there was always something I did better, or something that clicked for me that hadn't clicked the time before. And what's great about mountain biking is you're never competing against other people. You're competing against yourself. It's you against the trail. What did I do last time? What can I do better this time? And it might just be one skill. It translates then to the next trail and the next trail and the next trail. And pretty soon you're kind of evolving, and that's what happened. I started doing harder trails. I have a lot of falls. If you've seen any of the previous videos Jose has posted, I'm sure you've seen falls that I've taken on my face, on my side, needles, whatever, cactus needles. People say, why do you do this? And unless you get out there, it's hard to explain. It's addictive from the perspective of you get so much from it, so much growth mentally, so much growth emotionally. And I teach this stuff, and I'm still growing emotionally and mentally in this process. And this is like a place where I'm an expert and constantly trying to grow. It just gives you a platform and foundation to grow in ways that I don't think other things could really give you. So now I'm at this point where I just want to keep improving, tackling things that I've never done before, proving to myself that I'm capable of more than I ever thought that I was capable of. You may not be the best or the fastest or the fittest, but it doesn't matter. You're gonna get something out of this. If you have wanted or thought about mountain biking, or it looks fun to you and you've been scared to try, or you think it's not for me, or I'm not athletic enough, just get that all out of your head. Just come out and experience it one time. Experience the group. Experience what it's like to be out there. Experience the benefits that you get from breathing the air, being out in that ambiance, and see if it makes a difference in your life. Because even if you don't become the best mountain biker ever, if it helps you to handle stress better in your life and makes you more resilient, I'm gonna tell you it's worthwhile. It's really hard to find things that really do that for you. So I encourage you to come out there. I hope to see you on the trail soon.